Hello and welcome to another episode of Metal Effort. My name's Nehemiah, and today we'll be looking at this piece of metal, the Wee Knives Bishop. This is kind of the big brother of the Wee Knives Deacon, fellow clergy member. It's not just an upscaled version of the Deacon, however, it is kind of its own thing. So we might be chiming in a little bit with the Deacon to see what's the same or what's different, but they are completely different knives, so I'll review them as such. With that out of the way, let's get into the size comparison. I've got our old trusty PM2 from Spyderco, as well as the smaller Para 3 from Spyderco. So all knives share an opening aperture. This is definitely bigger than the Para 3, as well as just a tiny bit bigger than this PM2. The PM2 is a 3.44 inch blade, where this is a 3.5 inch, not counting blade length, obviously, the cutting edge, rather. This is a 3.25 inch. And then I do want to throw a couple other knives here for comparison's sake. I've got the really high-end comparison, which is the 3.75 inch Shergorov Hadi R. And then maybe on the other end, I've got a Civivi Backlash, just for some comparison's sake, low end, high end, all good knives. With that out of the way, let's get into the dent, the decent, the excellent, the nitpicks, and the terrible of this piece of metal. First thing I want to talk about is the weight. So we're using premium parts here. We've got titanium, which is lightweight. We have CF, which is lightweight. And so we're clocking in at just under 3.9 ounces. That's just a hair over an ounce an inch. Not that big of a deal. There are no interior milling on the knife, but the premium parts are definitely helping it out in this regard. So could be heavier, could be lighter, somewhere in the middle. I think as far as carrying this knife in my pocket, I wasn't concerned about the weight at all. I definitely felt it, but it wasn't something that I would complain about much. So I'm putting it in my decent, definitely a good EDC knife for sure. Next thing I'm going to talk about is this stonewash blade. So this is M390, which is fantastic. And you can tell that it's M390 by a very subtle, small M390 right there. And I think that's my favorite way to do it. The information I want on the blade is just the steel type. I don't want anything else. And if you are going to put the steel type on there, you'll get bonus points if you try to hide it. And so Wee Knives has got it in the bag, man. That's 100% how I want it done as far as the lack of billboarding. They got the ad block on this knife on. I really like the jimping on the places where jimping is, which would be right where your thumb rests, above the opening aperture. Very similar to a PM2 or a Para 3. Jimping is equally good and correctly done on the flipper tab, and then a little bit of bonus jimping here on the CF backspacer. This is definitely carbon fiber in the backspacer, and it gives you some traction if you're putting it in your palm. Not a huge deal. Usually doesn't matter too much if it's there or not, but it's there and it works. So good job on that. Similar to the blade, the clip is stonewashed as well to match. Maybe a little bit darker, but pretty much the same. And they did a good job here. I like this. You got the 3-line thing, which is kind of creeping up on a lot of Wee's stuff as well. It's even Civivi's stuff. So starting to become their thing. And then they fixed a problem that the Deacon had. The Deacon, my biggest complaint on the Deacon was where the lanyard hold was, where the clip being positioned right underneath was kind of dumb. I don't like that. I think the clip should take precedence over the lanyard hole. And so here on the Bishop, they kind of moved it around in a crooked way, I think, and just put the lanyard hole up here where the blade is going to be out of the way. Make the clip a little bit less shallow. I like this. This is good. I'm still not giving it like 100%, excellent, perfect score, 10 out of 10, because this could be deep carry, and it's not super shallow as far as that goes, and at least they brought the clip up as high as they could. So, definitely a passing grade. It's going to be in my decent section. So, good job. Could be better, but still good. I did take the knife apart. It's incredibly easy to do so. and pretty straightforward. It's just screws, take the scale, the CF scale off, and you can get it into the knife and take it apart no problem. So I like it when a knife is able to get in there easy enough, and I'm happy about that. Last part in the decent section here is one very specific way to open the knife, and that is the spider flick option. And the detent is such, we'll talk more about this later, but in terms of this opening, it's awesome. It's great. I can get it out, nice and hard with authority, and I like this. I like spider flicking knives. I think it's my favorite way. And for this knife, for this action, this particular way to open it is amazing. It's awesome. It's not in the excellent because of the other issues with the action, and so I'm kind of splitting it up here a little bit. But this kind of, flicking, kind of flick, disengage, close, you can get that down pretty good. And as far as like a fidget knife, I think this passes. It's pretty good. I like it. To start us off in the excellent section, I want to talk about ergonomics. The ergos on this knife are spectacular. They're very good. So you've got the thumb ramp, and similar to our PM2 friend here, it's very nice where your pinch grip is here. You don't have a sharpening, or a finger choil rather, but just where the knife is kind of positioned, your pinch grip is right here, and it's good. This is definitely closer and gives you a little bit more of a connection to the knife, but it's definitely there. And where the PM2 lacks is these flat scales, and the Bishop kind of one-ups it here a little bit with the contouring of the scales. They're definitely contoured. The titanium and the CF are very comfortable. This is stone-washed titanium, and then the finish on the CF is nice. And so it rests in your hand really, really nicely. There's no hot spots off the clip. You have the finger, kind of groove here, lets you get into the lock bar to disengage it, but it also just contributes to having a place to put your index finger. So I really like the ergos on this knife. I think they're very good. Still not beating my Koenig Arius, but almost very good. Next excellent thing is kind of a weird one to have an excellent, but I have to give them credit. The fit and finish on this knife is basically immaculate. You have perfect centering. All the seams are really nice. This part is kind of hard to get done correctly, where you don't have any gaps or anything in between the bolster titanium and the CF, but it is perfect here. All the screws, fit in correctly. They're aligned. Taking this apart and putting it back together just kind of showed me, how well they did on the fit and finish. And, I want to give them credit for that, because it's something that you don't see on every knife, expensive or inexpensive, but they got it right. Even the grind on this blade, which we'll talk about later, is, even and correctly done. I think they ground this knife very, very well. Everything is heavily chamfered. The opening aperture is definitely chamfered heavily, again, contributing not to just good action, but a comfortable flipping action. That's good. Even Spyderco, has had times where this was a little bit sharp, and I think, we managed to do this really, really well. You can open it like a Sabenza. You can do like a thumb open. It's a little bit kind of hard to break the detent coming in at it from that side. Spidey flick definitely works a lot better, but you can do it. And so, fit and finish helps with that a lot. Last thing in the excellent section is just the value on this knife. This is clocking in at $253. Now, you're considering, a lot of things here. You have M390, fantastic, perfect, awesome, amazing, wouldn't change that. Titanium, great. Anno work, great. Stonewash anno, really looks nice, kind of give it that, really classy look. CF is excellent. The fact that it's there, it's done well. Just everything about this knife screams value. Now, if you're listening, earmuffs, if this knife costs $300, I would probably still say this is acceptable. Given the fact that it's 250-ish, puts it in my excellent instead of just my decent. And so I think we, pricing $50 under what other knives would be charging, other companies would be charging for similar quality knives. I think this is how to do it. This is gonna, keep your customers loyal. It's gonna generate, trust and a reputation of just doing quality work at a quality, reasonable price. And I want them to continue to do that. They used to be like crazy cheap. I think they had to do that to, kind of get our attention and pull people away from like mindlessly just buying domestically. If that's your thing, fine. I'm more of like, go Earth, go humans, than, go Americans. I'm more in line of just humanitarian in that regard. I'm not gonna say that anybody that is a patriot or is loyal to their country is doing something bad. I think maybe acknowledging that we is made of humans. Those humans deserve recognition for the work that they're doing and the price that they're doing in that. And so if word got out that we was treating their employees, I think my stance would change a little bit. But from what I understand, they're doing good work over there, and nobody's getting the short change. So kind of I don't want to get into politics too much usually, but at least on this channel. And I think that this is priced correctly. Any cheaper and I'd be worried. Any more expensive, I'd be worried. I think this is perfectly priced for what you're getting. With that out of the way, let's get into the nitpicks. This is not a perfect knife, and I have a few qualms with it. First thing is the detent. It works for the spider flick, but for the flipper tab, it's a whole nother story. The flipper tab itself is perfectly fine. I wouldn't change anything about it, but the detent is weak. That if you hand this knife to like a knifeful, which is a non-knife person, knifeful, they might go like this. So obviously, being a knife person, we know how to, figure out exactly the speed and the authority that we need to flip our knives in order to have it open every time, all the time. But this isn't idiot proof. It definitely can be misfired if you're not paying attention, or if you hand it to somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. It doesn't feel that great. It's not a detent where you use it with the flipper tab and you're like, oh yeah, this is amazing. I would say it's above average, so it's definitely not my terrible section. It's not like this is fundamentally breaking the knife. It's not unsafe. You can't get the blade to come out, with shaking it or anything like that. It's just weaker, but acceptable. And, as far as me being a crazy nut, I really would go goo goo gaga if they can make the detent where this works just as well as this. And they're not even. They're not even close to even. So, it's one of those things. I don't know if you can have your cake and eat it too. I know there are knives that can do it, but, each knife is a different design and, may or may not be possible. So, seems as though they're favoring the spider flick detent than the liner, the flipper tab detent. I don't know. And obviously there's going to be variance here. Maybe your knife has a stronger detent. From the other reviewers, it looks as though, we're all getting similar detents, which is on the weaker side, in contrast to the very perfect detent on the Deacon. I mean, this is perfection as far as detent goes. Any softer or harder, and it would get further away from perfection. So it's kind of disappointing that the detent is better on this than on the Deacon. But, I got to call it like I see it. And, this was perfect action, is perfect action on the Deacon with open, disengage, close. The open depends on how you're opening it. Disengage is fine, but transitioning into my next nitpick, the close is not. So the actual action itself, once you get the detent ball onto the tang of the blade here, then it's one jostle, which is good. I like that. I don't want it to be like 100% guillotine. It can be free fall shut, but just shut slow, which is exactly where the sheer Goroff is. This is the perfect, drop shut action you could possibly have. So that detent ball needs a detent ramp. And I think if a ramp was put on this knife, the close would be good, and then as far as like flicking it open, disengaging would be fine, and then a little bit better lock drop shut. It wants to get hung up on that detent ball a little too much. It reminds me kind of the jack, where if I put it on that ledge, it's gonna pop open before it actually shuts, which is kind of frustrating. Some people like that like little half stop as like a safety feature, saying it's a feature, not a bug. I disagree, but I definitely acknowledge that that's, just a preference thing. I don't think it's a fundamentally good or bad thing one way or another. I know that Michael Elmer recently did a video maybe a week ago saying that he prefers it like that. He's a big fan of the Fair and Forge guys. He's obviously over there. Bias. And he prefers it that way. I don't think it's like a huge deal. It's not a big deal. But if you can put a detent ramp on this sucker, I think it would definitely make it something I'm more interested in. So maybe you agree, maybe you don't, but at least you know about it. Last little tiny nitpick is the non-free spinning pivot here, which is good that it's not free spinning. I like that. There's a little shelf, and so that shelf seems to have been kind of, machined out at an incorrect angle. I'm pretty sure the knife is not supposed to be like this. So looking at pictures, I don't think all the bishops have this problem. It's not a huge deal, not a deal at all, but something I'll mention. Small thing. And last thing we're going to talk about in the terrible section is this non-committal recurve. Now, if you like recurves, power to. If you have the sharpening tools and know how to sharpen a recurve and it's not a bother and you like it, it is good for cutting like, cardboard and stuff like that. It tends to cut, really good, funneling everything to the same spot on the blade. And, I've reviewed the Tamgram Rumble. I've handled a Grimsmo Norseman. But those knives are owning the whole recurve thing a little bit more than this knife. This is very non-committal. And so I kind of want them to piss or get off the pot. Either make a straight up recurve and just own it, or just make this flat. And this would be a lot easier to sharpen. I think it would look just as good. And, we could throw this on our KMEs and, sharpening systems. We could put it on our flat stones and not have to worry about this. But as it is, this is really frustrating for me personally. I don't think this ruins the knife at all, and it's only in the terrible section because it's the strongest, most compelling reason for me to sell or trade this knife right now. Maybe I could do a little bit of a side project and machine in or rub in a detent ball track. Reprofiling the blade is not something I'm really looking into doing. I could do it. I don't want to do it. Yeah, so it's just kind of annoying. If it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother you. Maybe it's in the nitpick, or maybe even in the positive. I don't know. Maybe you like that. But for me, it's in the terrible. Just so I have something in the terrible, and because it really is annoying to me. So now let's transition into the conclusion. I think doing the reviews in this way, where I have the negative stuff at the end, I don't want people to think that I'm, more down on the knife than I am. I think this is overwhelmingly a good knife, and I can easily recommend it to somebody, with a couple asterisks of, hey, it's got a recurve. The detent ball is kind of a hard stop. It's kind of a speed bump. I don't agree with the whole it's a feature, not a bug thing. If we're all responsible adults, we don't need speed bumps in front of, schools. We're not going to drag race in front of schools. So just make it smooth, make it closed, shut, and we'll be careful. I mean, obviously we're handling a sharp object. If we cut ourselves, that's our own fault. You don't need to protect us. So that's kind of my opinion on that. But if you disagree with me, if you agree with Michael Elmer, who I do respect a lot, that's fine. Then maybe this is a good thing. Maybe you like this. It doesn't want to close, and I have to push it up onto that detent ball, and then it closes. If that's fun to you, then great. This is going to be an excellent knife, because the value is really there. You have titanium, you have M390, you have all the CF. It looks good. It feels good. It cuts well. it's a high enough grind, it's a thin enough blade stock that everything comes together where I can recommend the knife if the negatives don't bother you as much as maybe it bothers me. So I think that's it. I think you have enough information to make a decision on your own. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you enjoy the knife if you pick one up, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!